This woman is the caretaker of her mentally challenged daughter, but at the same time, she is the mother of her twin grandchildren. It might sound confusing, but this woman here is dealing with some of the toughest challenges any human could face. Looking at her, you might think that she's physically normal, but internally, she's virtually dead because of what she's been through all her life. As many parents would know, burying your own child is one of the most tragic things that can ever happen to you, and this woman has not buried just one, but two of her children already. The remaining one is this daughter sleeping on this little sheet, which is spread on a solid ground with no mattress underneath. And if she was healthy, at least this woman would be smiling a little, but unfortunately, this girl is also seriously sick and she suffers from extreme mental challenges. One day, when she had gone out of the house, she was approached by men who took advantage of her and forced themselves into her without her consent. She came back home crying, and her mother later discovered that she was pregnant. At the birthing bed, she gave birth to the beautiful twins, but unfortunately, she is not capable of raising them, nor even helping her mother to do so. You might think that maybe if this woman had a partner, she wouldn't be suffering this much alone, but unfortunately, her husband is also disabled and can't do anything at all. Meanwhile, their house is almost shattered and it can collapse anytime, given its current state. One morning, this woman looked around and found no hope, which prompted her to tie a rope on a branch of a tree, ready to end her life. The story of how an angel voice prevented her from proceeding with her action will leave you speechless, but her struggle to sustain her family might leave you shedding tears on your cheek. This is a painful story. On the day of her marriage, Editha was very hopeful of a bright future with her husband, who was a mechanic. A few months down the line, the happy couple welcomed their first son and they would go on to have 2 more kids. But their life was not going to be great all along. At one point, their first child died as a result of an illness, and their second child also died a few years later on. This girl was the remaining child, but at 7 years old, she started to develop behaviors from what seemed to be a mental disorder. At first, it started as a headache, and we would take her to the hospital where she could get medical attention and some medicines to use. She continued all activities, including going to school and playing with other kids. By then, I was still working together with my husband and everything was normal in our family. We were never rich, but we also didn't run out of money since we both had jobs. At first, the headache seemed like a normal crisis which would be managed by the family, but later on, things started to escalate rapidly as her condition got worse every other week. Eventually, she dropped out of the school after it was clear that she was no longer able to function properly. But her troubles couldn't have come at the worst time. At that moment, Editha's husband had a terrible accident which left him disabled. Sadly, her daughter's headache turned into a mental disorder as the girl started to act aggressively, throwing stones at neighbors and breaking everything in her way. One morning, she left the house and went out on her own. A few hours later, she came back home with blood between her legs and she was bitterly angry. Her mother could see that the predatory men had taken advantage of her to satisfy their lust, and she was extremely heartbroken. She tried to trace down the predators, but unfortunately, she couldn't find them as her daughter is not able to speak properly because of her mental challenges. But that action completely changed the way she viewed life at that point, and she decided to stop her job in order to protect her girl. However, that decision would have an impact on the whole family. When she came back home that day, I could see what happened to her. I was heartbroken by the fact that men could take advantage of a mentally challenged teenager who had no ability to consent to anything that happens to her. By the time, I made the decision to stop my job in order to take care of my daughter. I was the only person who was working in the family, and I knew that such a decision would have a negative impact on all of us. But at the same time, I couldn't sit down and live a normal life where I know the risks that await my teenager girl if I'm not able to protect her. I choose to prioritize her health above everything else. As this woman stopped her job, the financial needs of her family did not stop growing. A few weeks later, she noticed that her daughter might have been pregnant, and when she took her to the hospital, the tests were actually positive. In order to save some money, the family made a decision to relocate into this house, which is extremely old and can fall down anytime now. Eventually, this girl gave birth to the twins, and by then, she had already lost a big part of her mental ability to do anything. Her mother was now responsible to raise them, but because of her age, it is quite a big challenge to her. It is very painful that I'm the one who is responsible for breastfeeding them. It is not an easy task since I'm an older woman and I have no money to buy them other nutrients which they need to compensate for breast milk. Sometimes the kids don't get any breast milk from me, and by then I take them to their mother and try to breastfeed them. Because of her aggressiveness, I do it while she's asleep in order to avoid that she might wake up and beat them. Edita no longer go out to work for money, which had placed her family under extreme poverty. Today, she cannot afford the basics, including feeding her family and paying for medical treatment for her daughter. In that circumstance, the biggest victims are the innocent twins who might suffer from malnutrition. Edita can do nothing to change that situation, which truly breaks her heart. This is one of the reasons she tried to end her life, only that an angel voice from God prevented her from doing it. We live in a bad life and we depend on our neighbors to survive. One day, I decided to end my life and did all the preparations. However, right before I was about to do it, I held an angel voice from God preventing me from doing it. I thought about my daughter and my grandchildren and wondered who would take care of them if I'm not around. My husband is disabled now, but he used it to take care of me when he was still healthy, and I felt that I shouldn't abandon him with the troubles he cannot solve. I didn't want to be a coward, and that's why I'm still alive. Edita needs urgent support to sustain her family, and everything is a priority for her. Her mentally challenged daughter needs urgent medical attention to reduce the gravity of her sickness, while her husband would like to get support, even a wheelchair. But her first priority are these kids she holds in her arms. They need healthy nutrients to replace the breast milk they cannot get regularly. I need whatever support I can find to help my family. I would be happy if my daughter is treated even if she cannot fully recover, but I would like to see her in a healthy mood. My husband can also benefit from a good wheelchair, but my biggest priority is my twin grandchildren. They are innocent and they don't know anything, and I want to do everything in my power to give them a good chance for life. However, I don't have anything I need to help them. I'd like to get help in this tough journey of raising them. Thank you for watching the Intax. You can subscribe and share the story of this family, and by doing that, you are playing your part in making the world a better place.